Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello, welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach, and today we have with us Joshua Dick, who is a business leader, growth advisor, and the author of the book, Grow Like a Lobster. Joshua, welcome to the program.
Mike, thank you so much for having me here. It's really a pleasure.
You're welcome. And I know that you're calling in today from Italy, so I think that it's really going to be neat to get your perspectives on world events, but give us a background on yourself, what led you to the field you're in and writing the book you wrote, and even moving to Italy. So give us a little background, and then let's dive into some great content.
Absolutely. So after a very diverse set of business and professional experiences that range from time and on Wall Street working for Salomon Brothers to doing classical consumer marketing and sales for Unilever, I entered, took over, grew, and developed what had been a family business. And our growth came mostly organically, but also through some acquisitions. The only thing that we actually did, and the thing that we stayed very focused on, was developing cleaning products for coffee machines, believe it or not. And we were able to take that business and grow it just from a small, under 12-person company to one that has products distributed in over 70 countries around the world with distribution centers on 3 continents. And when I was fortunate enough to sell the business to a private equity firm, I stayed on for a while as the CEO. But about a little longer than a year after that, my wife and I made the decision that we had this wonderful opportunity in life to experience something new and make our family and children global citizens. And we picked up and moved from our home in the New York area to beautiful Florence, Italy.
Wow. That sounds like a fairy tale story. I'm sure it feels like it sometimes as well. But let's move into you took those experiences from the family-owned business or the business that you ran and then started your own consulting firm, correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's so much as a heavily developed consulting firm as it is a set of investments that I've been making specifically in my area of focus, which is coffee related. And as part of my sort of investment philosophy, I've been working closely with the management teams of the companies into which I've made investments, but also some that I just admire and haven't quite decided about whether or not I'll be investing in. And sometimes there's some consulting and advisory done on a very select basis for companies that I feel like I can help or whose leaders inspire and impress me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then let's talk about your book, Grow Like a Lobster, because, of course, that sounds very curious and interesting. So I love these word pictures and case studies that way. And I'm certain that in that book is your philosophy on focus and the importance of avoiding distractions.
Absolutely. So when I had the chance to sell the business and step back a little bit, I realized that there were an incredible number of experiences that I had over the course of my career leading Ernex brands and developing the business that I wished someone had told me when I was getting started. And the book Grow Like a Lobster is really my way of taking some of those lessons and compiling them into what I call something of a no-nonsense guidebook for how to get things done and build a business of extraordinary value. And the primary thing there is about focus, avoiding distraction, and really giving yourself the freedom and knowledge to know that you're capable of doing what you set out to do, because setting goals is so important.
Yeah, and I know that sounds very basic and vanilla and cliche because a lot of leadership books and growth books would say the same thing. So I love the twist that you take with a lobster. How do you infuse the Grow Like a Lobster into that methodology?
Absolutely. You hit it right on the head. I don't claim to have created some new business tool or lesson. I hope readers will feel a good job synthesizing some well-known ideas in business and making them a little bit more approachable and attainable. And the metaphor of the lobster is one that I actually use throughout my business career. The first time I heard the story of how a lobster grows, and to grow, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it has to actually rip its body out from inside of its hard shell in order to have enough room to build a new shell around itself larger.
Wow.
And I had this image of this vulnerable, fleshy lobster sitting on the bottom of the ocean floor, and felt this projection of that on myself. I saw myself as so vulnerable and so weak at times running the business, and I wanted to use that idea or that metaphor of the lobster to remember that there are these times in life and in business when our shell is hard, things are going very well, but we should always remember that the tough times follow. And if we can plan and prepare and focus ourselves on how to be in the right position for those times, we're going to be better able to handle them.
Agreed, and I love that lobster example. I think we'll come back to that in a minute, but I want to really now merge into something that's current, because at the time of this recording, when we're doing this episode, it's March of 2020, and your country and my country and half the world, I'm sure, is in the coronavirus lockdown. And I think that it's unprecedented. I'm 52, and there's not been anything like this I remember in my lifetime, but I'm appreciating the fact that we're looking to our higher powers in the government and our agencies that are looking to protect us. Let's talk about how entrepreneurs, business leaders can take this time and not get frantic, but get focused.
So you're right on. In fact, I was just talking to a friend who's a business owner today, who's in the coffee industry, as you might expect, about how he joked with me that this is another molt, which is the lobster losing its shell. And the conversation we had was about what's he going to do, because the primary source of his business is selling coffee to hotels and restaurants in Italy and around the world, and most of them are shut down right now.
Yeah.
And he's really working aggressively and very creatively, in my opinion, about how to do direct-to-home delivery, website development. He has a team of PR people out there doing outreach, and I was super impressed with the way he's trying to think about it and use it as an opportunity not to give up, but to focus his energy. And in our conversation today, he was saying, it's a shame that I haven't done this before. I've always known that there's online sales potential for my products, but we've been so busy and doing so well on these other things that we haven't really focused on it. Maybe now's an opportunity for me to do a better job of developing it.
I love that mindset, because it's not even the, kind of the cliche word we've heard in business for a decade or so, a pivot. Let's pivot to this, and it's kind of similar, the same, but not really, but it's a full pivot. What we're describing here now is not necessarily a pivot. It's just being flexible and malleable, and like you mentioned here, just kind of making the best of the circumstance. Now, when the tide turns back, then in your friend's case, those businesses, hotels, and restaurants are going to come back and go, send me your coffee. And he then should be in a position where he goes, okay, we're going to crank that back up. Great. But we also have now this new kind of division or vertical or section of the company that we're doing the direct-to-consumer, and that's going to give even more stability to them. So I think that that's such a perfect mindset for now, is how can we focus and refocus and fine-tune. Any other thoughts, or have you seen any other applications of that in business for in this time that we're in right now?
I was just thinking about it because there's these things in a business, in my opinion, that we know we need to do, but sometimes we are so busy with the urgent, the hectic, putting out the fires, that we forget to focus on the important. And I think I was very fortunate very, very early in my career building a business that I had a terrible physical injury, a sports injury, and I was laid up for several weeks, unable to drive, unable to go to the office, really before remote meetings and remote leadership was possible. And that was when I wrote our mission and vision statement with my partner, who came to me sort of post doses of painkillers from the ankle surgery that I had just had. And when I think back on it, that sort of quiet time, again, another molt, to use my lobster metaphor, was a chance to really lay the foundation for something that served the business phenomenally well for the next 15 years. And I'm not sure that had that quiet time not presented itself to me, that I would have had the time or the energy or the focus to develop it and do that very, very important piece of business building.
I think that you will look back, or in this case, you looked back and came up with that point. And I think that we all now today will look back and come to the point of the same thing. We're going to look back and go, if we approach this the right way and don't, get frantic and we actually focus, then I think we are going to go, hey, if it wasn't for this, opportunity, we might not have shifted just a little bit or focused or added this element in. So I think that's really important. And I remember some speaker or trainer a couple decades ago, I remember this so distinctly, that they were training hotels on how to take care of disgruntled guests at the front desk. And they trained their front desk rather than, here's this irate guest customer, and they go to the, turn around and stick their head in the back room and go, hey, boss, we got a upset customer, they are asking for you. And, that just makes the problem worse. But they train them to turn around and within earshot and loudly say, sir, we have an opportunity out here. Can you please come out and help? Well, the opportunity is to fix the problem. The opportunity is to, dissuade any emotions. And then they come away from that interaction going, you know what? I really appreciated the way they handled that. So I think, rather than looking at our circumstances and going, now what? We look at it and go, here's an opportunity. Now what? And I think that's a really huge mindset that you bring up there.
I think it's 100% true. I hope and expect that we're going to see in the years ahead of us great ideas that were born out of this very difficult situation that the world is facing in trying to contain and slow the spread of this virus. And hopefully someone somewhere is sitting back listening to a podcast or planning and preparing or doing something smart that maybe will be a breakthrough that will serve us all very well for years and years to go. Come.
And Josh, have you ever read the book The E-Myth by Michael Gerber?
I have not, but it is a title that is on my list.
And it's one of the classics, and one of the teachings in there is to take time to work on your business, not in your business. And that is a methodology that Michael Gerber taught, where he was saying, look, there's 27 hours every day of work you can do. You can't ever get it done, ever. So you need to pull away and take time to work on that business. Not the minutia of the day, not the tasks and the doing, but the planning and the strategy. So whether that's one day a week, one day a month, one day a quarter, get away, half day, full day, whatever you want to think of it as, maybe even it's on a full weekend, and get up to the mountains or to a quiet spot and reflect and plan. So I think that methodology and mindset has been around forever. And like what we're talking about here, we now are being given that opportunity. We're being forced to take that time to go, okay, now what? And it's not like let's change this kind of a situation. It's a where can I be more value to my target audience, my clients, my close network. And when we can take that time to work on the business while working in the business, but we're given that opportunity. And I think that we all could say on a scale of 1 to 10, how busy are we at all times? And I think we're all at 12. We're just go, and we don't take time to kind of reflect and plan. And sometimes that time we would take, once things get back to normal, I would say that one of the takeaways from this time needs to be, we need to have that regular moment, whether it's a half a day, a month, or a full weekend, a quarter, but take that time to reflect and strategize, because we're going to find some of these moments that come up with these aha times.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I also think that there's something to be said for this idea of really big, aggressive goal setting, because once you've defined where you aspire to go, it becomes a lot clearer where you need to spend the time working on the business rather than in the business. If it's always coming back to how am I going to get there, you're going to really find the time to work on the things that make the business great and, what I say in my book, extraordinary. But if you don't know where you're going, it's a little bit hard and sometimes inefficient to carve out time to work on the business if you haven't first worked on really where the end goal is.
Yeah, 100%. Like Stephen Covey used to say, begin with the end in mind, and you need to have that goal, and it needs to be a well-placed goal, not just I want to achieve better revenues, because that's not clear enough. And I think on the other side of the equation is it needs to be a realistic, attainable, kind of like the old cliche SMART goal, because if you set your goals too high and lofty and you don't feel it could be achieved and you don't have good milestones along the way, you will frustrate yourself. And the example I like to say when we talk about this, because this comes up frequently, is if you made in your business $1 million last year and your goal is in 12 months to make $17 million, how are you going to go from that one thing to the other? Because it's just a huge leap. But if you went from 1 to 1.4, hey, a 40% increase, that's attainable. I could do that. And then it starts to build that momentum. So talk a little bit about having that vision of having the clear focus, exactly, yes, but also making sure that they are achievable and attainable while still having that aspect of a good, not necessarily, I mean, the big, hairy, audacious goal, the BHAG, but to make sure that it's believable. It's the believable BHAG, let's call it that.
I mean, you couldn't have set me up better, because my whole book, Growth Like a Lobster, is about consistent, controlled growth.
Wow. Every
time a lobster molts and every time it grows, which it does throughout its life, it never grows more than 15%. And for me, I built a business that grew 15% a year every year for 15 years. We never aspired and set goals much higher than 20%, and we never expected anything less than 15%. And that was able to really help us do things in pace without burdening ourselves, without overextending ourselves and taking it on. And also, I believe that having a achievable goal that you can get to without cash flow constraints, human resource constraints, is something that lets you figure out how to say no. I think sometimes business owners and business leaders, aspire to what you said, that 700% growth. And to get there, they say yes, 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 because every option presented to them as a sales revenue perspective is one more thing to help them get to their 700% growth. But a lot of those choices are bad ones, are not the right ones for their business. So if you can be disciplined and only expect a limited amount and only work towards a little amount, I think you can get there more efficiently and more extraordinarily.
I had no clue that was a setup for a principle of your book, so I'm pleased with that. So that's wonderful. The other thing is, I think there's another book, Darren Hardy, the publisher of Success Magazine, wrote The Compound Effect. And then also combined with that, this thought is Albert Einstein was known for saying one of the wonders of the world is compound interest. Well, this 15% thing seems like, oh man, that's a joke. I'm 10x guy. I'm the grinder, but think about something. If you have this compound effect and the exponential and the exponential growth of compound, right? Compound interest, think of it like that. It's not money to have interest. But if you grew at 15%, and let's say that $1 million figure that we're talking about is now $1,150,000. Well, that is $150,000 in growth. But guess how much your growth the following year is? Well, it's 15% of $1,150,000. So it's going to have that incremental growth. And then the next year is 15 of that new bigger number. So all of a sudden, sure, you can have some processes in place and momentum where maybe one year you do spike to 20 or 25, but you're not making these unrealistic goals. And this 15%, by having that compound effect applied to it, becomes to where this momentum is just like a boulder rolling down the mountain.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, because the other thing that happens is, we were fortunate enough to have 15 consecutive years of 15% growth, which led to an increase in revenue of 25 times. But what's really amazing is that our earnings, or EBITDA, increased nearly 300 times.
Wow.
So as we grew and as the business gained scale on the top line, we were able to achieve incredible profitability increases that were disproportionate. And that was really what led to, again, what I say, extraordinary value creation.
I love it. Well, let's. I think we can talk for probably about 7.5 more hours here on this, but let's wrap it up with the thought of, if you want to grow your business like a lobster and have this growth and prosper and focus, not be frantic during this time of downtime, forced downtime, let's make the best of it. What's the best way that someone can reach out to you, pick up a copy of your book, and learn from those principles?
Absolutely. So I have a personal website, which is joshua-dick.com. And through there, you can actually subscribe to a blog where I release little 2-3 minute blurbs and ideas about business and efficiency. You can also contact me through that, joshua-dick.com. And then the book, Grow Like a Lobster, is available everywhere that Amazon exists in every country. It's also available on Audible and Kindle versions. And there's an independent book website at growlikealobster.com. So through those little sources, you should be able to find me pretty easily.
Well, Joshua, thank you so much for coming on. I really loved our conversation, loved where it went, and definitely will pick up a copy of your book.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to chat with you, and I love what you're doing and getting the message out about all these really important business lessons. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.